everybody, welcome back to the Chaotic Little Book Corner. Today has been a weird day. It's really rainy and foggy outside, and it's cold, and it's wet, and it's damp, and there's snow on the ground. And I woke up this morning and our water heater was broken. Well, actually, our water in general, our well dried up in the night. So we had no water, and everything just felt strange and off and just weird. And I had this feeling of, I knew this feeling from somewhere and I couldn't place it. And I thought about it for a while, and I realized that in the month that I have now read Fingersmith by Sarah Waters, I mentioned it briefly in passing as a wrap-up. And I enjoyed it, and I told you that, but I didn't register how much I enjoyed it. After sitting down and diving into a second read and letting myself immerse completely in the story and reading it with such a atmospheric day outside, I came to the conclusion that not only was it a new favorite book of last year, so I don't change my top 10, but I would say if I had an 11th, it would be this. Not only does it impress upon me that greatly, but it's now one of my favorite books of all time. And I have to talk to you about it just a little bit. So, I'm on read number 2 of this book. And the first time I read it, I was in the mindset that Sarah Waters was historical fiction with a little bit of lesbian romance. I was basing this off of Tipping the Velvet. And I kind of gave myself this boundary of what I believed her writing style was. And I really regret that I did that, because the first one that I encountered, which was Tipping the Velvet, there was an insta-love connection. There was definitely conversation around the relationship involving the both females and their lesbian romance and all of those things. But I felt that that was the extent of Tipping the Velvet for me. I saw that there was some depth, but I didn't feel complete depth. So when I read this, I was expecting a romance novel, again, in a historical fiction setting. And as I read it, the twists and the turns and the depths and the intrigue and the conversation of mental health and the treatment of women and the treatment of the poor versus the rich and the conversation of proper etiquette and expectations of those in the Victorian era became much more clear after I had stepped away from it for a month. And I think the reason was I needed to separate myself from believing that this was just another romance novel. So last night, I watched a couple backlog videos of Mercedes from Mercy's Bookish Musings. And I watched her final review on Affinity. And I realized there was something about Sarah Waters that was pulling me back in. And something about Sarah Waters that had me intrigued. And so when I woke up this morning and the mood felt right and the environment felt creepy enough, I picked this up for a second time. And I'm now into it again. And I can't believe how much I didn't give it its full appreciation the first time around. I can't believe how much I missed of it. And I feel like I really wish that I could go back and read it again for the first time, because there are things about it that I wish I didn't know reading the second time that changes your experience and relationships with some of the characters. But as that stands, and as I'm reading it a second time, I've come to the realization that this book, this exploration, this beautiful depiction of a madhouse, of intrigue and of lustful theft and romance and plot-driven goodness with a lot of character depth is now an auto-buy author for me, and also one of my favorite books of all time. So I wanted to give this the proper love that it deserved, and in doing so, I hope that you guys will consider reading this. If you are not already subscribed to Mercedes, you should definitely go check her out. But this book in general, Sarah Waters in general, I will pick up anything that she recommends for the most part, and I will pick up anything she writes from here on out. I have now ordered 2 more of her books to see if they can hold up to this. Granted, I do understand that I have a bias against this one because it does discuss and dive into asylum world style life, and there's definitely a bias there for me. But I loved this book, and I absolutely recommend it to anyone who's looking for a good, wintry, dark, sort of historical Victorian novel. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that, and I will see you guys next video.